Welcome back to another episode of the One Tree Hill Rewatch here on the Filmaholic channel. I'm Matthew, and today we're going to be talking about two episodes in Season 4 of One Tree Hill. And these are the last two episodes in the first half of the season, which is 409 of 410. 409 is my personal favorite episode of Season 4, unless that was the change when I finish doing the rewatch, and I come across an episode that I like more, but as my memory serves, this is my favorite episode of the season. It's really emotional. It's got some great iconic moments, and a lot of stuff happens in this episode. It originally aired November 29th, 2006, and was directed by Greg Prange and written by Mark Schwann. Of course, the big team of huge episodes, a lot of mid-season finales, a lot of finales, up until season 3 when Mark starts coming in to direct the finales. I need to check too. I wonder. I thought that Mark directed a lot of big episodes moving forward after season 3, but I'm wondering if he mainly just does finales, if my memory serves. Finales and mid-season finales, because I do know he directs the mid-season finale of season 8, which isn't a very great episode at all, but we'll talk about that when we get there. But this episode, yeah, it feels like a mid-season finale, which is interesting kind of to me that they didn't make it to the mid-season finale, because I definitely think you could have and made 4010 the mid-season premiere. I actually think I probably would have done that, because has a big cliffhanger in this episode, and 410 has a cliffhanger too, but it's only kind of like one cliffhanger, and a lot of things are resolved. Not You still have a lot of problems, but a lot of the big cliffhanger things from 409 is resolved in 410. But yeah, so 409 is the state championship. That's the big thing of the episode. It's the state championship. Nathan is going to have to lose the game. Lucas is pissed about it. Nathan tells him the truth. And Lucas comes up with a plan to isolate Nathan and to play the game of their lives and beat the other team and win the state championship despite Nathan's need to lose the game. So he tells Skills the truth, and both of them start playing to win, which causes ends up they get in a fight on the court, Nathan and Skills, and Dan's there, but he can't bear to watch it because he's so upset about it, so he leaves. He sees Dante there as well. Karen not convinces, she's pretty much tells Deb, "You're coming to this game. Like, this is your son's last game in high school. You're going to come, and you should come sober too." Deb's not going to do that. She ends up passing out on the way to the game, and Karen drops her off at a rehab facility, which I'm a little confused where that rehab facility was supposed to be, because as you know, most of this episode takes place in Raleigh. They go to play at the NC State court, and so that would be about 2 hours away from Tree Hill. So they go there. So yeah, I'm not sure where she drops Deb off, if it was just somewhere random, or if she takes her back to Tree Hill and drops her off, or if it's in Raleigh. I guess it doesn't really matter, but it's just, I'm curious about it. So that happens in the episode. We also have the cheerleaders all going together. Haley tutoring Rachel, which she agreed in the last episode. Really, this is just a lead in to the whole stealing the calculus test, which I could care less about in this season. Very weak storyline, in my opinion. They set that up in this episode. They set it up in the last episode, but they go into it further in this episode with Rachel actually getting tutored by Haley, and also the reveal at the end of this episode that it's really Brooke who's failing calculus, and Rachel stole the keys from Haley so they can steal the test. And it's just like, this is really weak. I can't believe you got to the point where you didn't know what to write for Brooke, that you came up with this when you had such strong storylines in the first 3 seasons. So I don't like that they're doing that in this episode. Haley has some pain, so they have to take her to the hospital to get checked out, and she ends up being fine, but she finds out that she is having a boy. She ends up coming back and telling Nathan that, and he starts playing good in the game after that news. So when that happens, Dan hears it on the radio, turns around, comes back to the game, and is able to be there when the team wins the state championship. And I love that they go back to some moments from season one, the final game in season one. Doesn't mean nothing if you don't make the shot. The quote from season one that brothers say to each other, they bring that back, and they also bring back Lucas being the one to make the final shot, especially since this is his last game that he will ever play. He makes the shot, and they win the state championship, which is awesome, and it's a beautiful scene after they win, with the confetti falling down, and just the music playing, and how the music stops when people are talking, and then it plays back again, and the camera's following, and you're going to each of these characters and how they are celebrating. Nathan and Haley together, Skills and Bevan, and then it cuts to Brooke and Lucas. Well, actually, it cuts to Peyton and shows her, but then it goes to Brooke and Lucas, and Brooke brings up the thing that Peyton had told her about all your dreams coming true. Because early in this episode, Peyton told Brooke the truth about her revealing her feelings to Lucas, and then him saying "oh." So Brooke pretty much gives him the permission that I think Lucas really needed to go to Peyton. Lucas has been really confused. He obviously was in love with Brooke for a long time, but I think at this point he ends up he is in love with Peyton, but with everything that's went on, he doesn't feel like he has the permission from Brooke. He doesn't feel like it's fair to do that, and Brooke gives him that permission, and he ends up going to Peyton after that, and they kiss, and I feel like one of the most iconic shots is of them kissing at the game, and him saying, "It's you, Peyton. It's always been you." Love that scene, and we see Whitey also with the trophy and everything, and that's nice. After that, we get a scene with Dan and Dante, where Dante reveals, I didn't choose Nathan because he was the star of the team. I chose him because he's Dan Scott's son. Turns out the kid actually has a soul. So obviously, Dante's knew Dan from the past when they were in school and everything. So all that's really interesting to me. And the fact that he said he'll be in touch. And Dan just saying, "Hey, I'm going to," tells Nathan later, "I'm going to take care of this. Whatever's coming your way, I'm going to be the one that's there to help you. I'm going to be your father, finally, do what I should be doing as a father." And then after that, we go to the actual, we go to Karen's Cafe. Everyone's celebrating. A lot of, little individual good scenes there. Dan tells Karen to take a night off, that he'll close with Lucas and will give him some time to spend with their son. Really like that scene. Lucas and Peyton kiss again, and decide to be in a relationship exclusively, which knew was coming, but they had that conversation, and it was nice at the cafe. You have the one with Brooke and Rachel about the test, which is, who cares. Also, I want to point out Chili's sponsors this episode. Chili's at the state championship, which is funny because Chili's has now appeared in two of my favorite shows, both in One Tree Hill and The Office, which is funny. Makes me want an awesome blossom. But yeah, so then Nathan and Haley walk outside. You see Dante's car in the distance, and then it cuts back to the inside. The whole timing of that situation when Nathan and Haley, we're about to leave, and then they do leave, and then we're supposed to believe during that time that Dan and Lucas are cleaning up. I feel like that all happened a little bit too fast. Honestly, when I was watching it, I'm like, you should have spread this out and added more scenes in the middle. It's a little bit nitpicky probably, but I felt like the scene with Dan and Lucas and them cleaning up should have been longer, and we should have been left with them being there for a longer time. So I feel like the Karen leaving part should have happened earlier, and Dan should have been there cleaning and locking up a little bit longer, but that's just me. But there is a nice little scene with Dan and Lucas there, about them spending time together. Nathan and Haley walk outside, and then obviously Dante runs Haley over, or runs her down. He doesn't run her over, but he hits her with the car. She goes over the windshield. Then Dante crashes up the street. Also, I want to point out another thing. Wilmington used to have it where when you parked on the street in these earlier seasons, you parked sideways on the right side of the street. Now, obviously, if you go to Wilmington, it's parallel parking on both sides, and that's how the streets are. So I want to know, and it's been like that ever since I started going, which was, I think, the start of season 5. So sometime soon, and it might be in this season, it has to be in the season, they changed the roads in Wilmington, and I want to keep an eye on that. I'm going to bring it up in this a future video when I first see that they've changed the streets. And that's just a small thing, but it's something I noticed from watching the show and being in Wilmington so much. So he crashes the car up the street. Nathan is, he doesn't know what to do. Lucas runs out. Nathan runs up the street and beats Dante. Lucas calls 911. Dan runs up to stop Nathan from beating Dante and says, you've killed him. He assumes that Nathan killed him. And, a lot of people I watch this with, they're like, well, how did he know that Nathan killed Dante? Because later Nathan didn't really kill Dante. Dante died on the impact. But it's just at that moment, that would be your first thought, especially if you're panicking, was like, he killed him. Cops are coming in the distance. What do? I stand up for my son, let him go and take the blame. And then you have, I love that scene so much. You have this heroic moment where Dan's like, go, Haley needs you, your child needs you. And Nathan leaves, and Dan punches the cement several times and breaks his hand to make it look like he beat Dante to death. And then he stands up and the police show up, and Dan's just standing there with his hand, raised, and it's all bloody. And I love that moment. It's one of my favorite moments in the season, or the high school years probably. I do know one little insider thing about that is, at the time, and I don't know if they would have, I would hope they still would have written it because it's a great part of the show that he did that for Nathan, but Paul Johansson had to have surgery on his hand. It was his hand. Had to have surgery on his hand, so that's, I guess, maybe why they had him punch the cement instead of maybe punching Dante. I'm not really sure, because he had to have surgery on his hand, so that's why in the future episode, when you see it wrapped, he actually had surgery on his hand. So they got away with having the surgery and a way to cover it up there in the show. But Dan gets arrested in that after that scene, and Nathan runs away. Lucas ends up having a heart attack because he didn't take his HCM medicine earlier in the episode, so he has a heart attack, and both him and Haley are rushed to the hospital. Brooke goes and tells Peyton what's up, and we have this voiceover, which I loved how they did that too. They had 2 voiceovers in the episode. They open with one, and then Whitey plays that same one again a little later in the episode, and this is actually a voiceover from, supposed to be a recording from the state championship of Dan, and then they actually have a different one, this state championship, that they'll play at the end, and I love that. I also want to point out one more thing about this episode before we move to the next one, which is the mid-season finale, and that is the fact that there's a deleted scene for this episode, and it's actually a pretty good deleted scene, and something I wish they had kept in the show, and it's with Dan and Whitey, where Dan goes to Whitey's office, and he starts off with their normal banter, where they're like, I can't believe it's been 18 years since we had a shot at the state championship, and you look like you've aged 50 years. They start off with that back and forth, but then Dan, tells Whitey that he's a good coach. He tells Whitey that he's a good coach, and it's a really good scene between them, and Whitey goes, I think we both lived in that game too long. It's time to let it go. I really wish they would have kept that scene. Of course, that scene, I understand personally, I would think, why they cut it from this episode, because it didn't fit in this episode, because it's supposed to be at the beginning, the night before, which the beginning of the episode is the night before the state championship, which would have been after episode 8, like later in the night. So technically, like in the middle of the night. So when we see Nathan come in this episode and tell Lucas that they're going to have to lose the state championship, that would have had to been in the middle of the night, like after he already went and talked to Dan, all of that. After Lucas found out about about Peyton and her feelings, like all that would have already had to happen. This would probably been like at midnight at least. So the scene with Dan going to see Whitey at the high school would have had to been in the middle of the night too, around midnight, which doesn't make sense. Also, definitely doesn't make sense that Dan would, because the last time we saw Dan in the previous episode, he was drinking scotch at his house and really upset about the Dante thing. So I don't think he would have gotten dressed again and went back to the high school to speak with Whitey. It didn't fit at all. But you should have moved this scene to 308 and fit it in somehow, I think, because the scene should have stayed in the show. It was really good. I was a big fan of it. However, and I don't really know, I don't know who you would ask about that, especially because I don't think, obviously Mark's not involved with anything in the show at this point, so I don't know who would be like a creative. Honestly, there's no one out there to ask about it. So yeah, but I wonder, what do you guys think? Would you consider deleted scenes to be canon to the show, to One Tree Hill, or would you think they're just deleted scenes and they're not canon? Because I'm not sure how I feel about it. Because if that scene's in there, you can still believe everything that happens after this point, but it adds a little bit to Dan and Whitey's relationship in the future episodes and moments where you're like, he kind of apologized to Whitey a little bit already. Like when we get to season 6, and that's one of my favorite scenes, is the scene with him and Whitey in season 6. So yeah, I wonder that too. Do you consider deleted scenes canon in terms of this show? I'm also like, I watched the deleted scenes for this episode and episode 11 of season 4, and I know when I got the DVDs I watched all these deleted scenes, but I don't remember these two scenes at all, especially that one with Dan and Whitey. So now I'm curious, and I'm not sure if I'm going to go back and do it with the episodes that I'm already past, but every deleted scene moving forward, I'm going to check out and watch and talk about it on the video, and see what you guys think. Do you do you think that scene should have been kept in there? If you get a chance, go check it out, because I think it's a good scene. The next episode I'm going to talk about is 410 Songs to Love and Die By, which is the mid-season finale of season 4. Originally aired December 6, 2006, was directed by John Asher and written by Mark Schwann. This is also the first episode that Mark Schwann. It's not the first episode that Mark has appeared on, because he's appeared in other episodes. I know he appeared, and then he's appeared in a photo in season 1, and in season 3 he was actually Pete's manager on the phone. But this is the first episode he appears as the character Max, which honestly, like, I liked that when I watched it on the show. Now it's just creepy to see him on there, but yeah. So he comes in this episode as well, and they set it up to be sort of like It's a Wonderful Life episode, and It's a Wonderful Life's literally playing on the TVs in the hospital and everything, which bothers me, honestly, though. Like, I like that they set it up like It's a Wonderful Life, and they have Keith come in as the angel and everything. Loved seeing Keith come back. I thought that was a great move to bring him back in this episode and have him be there with Lucas. But this episode should be based in early April. Why is the hospital playing It's a Wonderful Life? It's not a Christmas episode, even though this is the episode that came out, at the end of the first half of the season, close to Christmas. It's not a Christmas episode, and it's weird that that's playing. But yeah, so that happens. Keith comes back. Lucas is pretty much like hanging on for his life. He's on his deathbed because of his heart attack. So he is with Keith the whole episode. It's a big thing about this episode, and Keith is showing him what his life would be like if he wasn't a good person and all this. And it's really great. I really like this episode a lot. It also touches on Peyton and Brooke's relationship, the fact that Peyton wants to be friends again, but Brooke's like, we can be friends, but it's not going to be the same. We're never going back to the people that we were, the friendship that we had. All that's great. Karen's suffering with the fact that she let Lucas play with the heart condition. Nathan struggling with what's going on. Haley's hanging on for her life too. They could lose the baby. Dan's in prison. Nathan's struggling with that as well. Love the stuff with Dan in prison and the scenes with him and Nathan. Like, when we get to the end of the season, I'm going to do like top 10 favorite moments of the high school years. There's a scene in here that might make it, and it's the scene with Nathan and Dan at the prison, where Nathan says, "I love you" to Dan. Now, Sarah didn't like it because Dan doesn't say "I love you" back to Nathan. But like I said, it's like, I think you get that from the fact that he went to prison or he's in jail for Nathan, that he took the blame for the fall for this. But I love that scene. It's just them back and forth. Dan asking about Nathan and Haley and all of this, And then Nathan says, "I love you," and Dan just calls for the guard and stands up and looks at Nathan. Like, it's just, I love it. I thought the performance between them, Paul Johansson and James Lafferty, was incredible in that moment. Really like that. Like I said, I love the stuff with Keith in this episode. We also see a scene with Keith and Dan where, you know, they have a back and forth. And that kind of goes to the point where I was saying too, where I think the kid version of Keith, the ghost, was all in Dan's head. And that Keith, the real Keith ghost, kind of points that out, clarifies it in this episode, I think. And then Keith says, "I forgive you." Dan's like, "Take that back." And he's like, "I forgive you, Danny." And then, but he opens his jacket and blood's coming from where he got shot. And then he jumps on the other side of the glass and says, "But hell won't." It's interesting at this point, because I like that Keith forgave him in this moment. And I like that he didn't really feel like a genuine forgiveness exactly because of the hell thing, which then you go to the end of the series and you get the forgiving moment, which is one of my favorite moments of the entire series. So I'm glad they did save that entirely, and I'm glad Dan would act like this, like, don't, take that back. You can't forgive me after these things I've done, and, because if you forgive me, that even fucks me up more than I already am. So I love all that, and yeah, but it's kind of interesting that Dan, or that Keith would say that about the hell thing and spook Dan more, because Dan is changing, but I guess he hasn't completely changed, and it hasn't been that long. It's only been 2.5 months at most since he killed Keith. So, you get the whole series, and we get to season 9, a lot has changed with Dan. So a lot more than he's already done in season 4 for Keith to be like, you became the brother, the person that I always knew you could be. But we'll get to that later. And obviously, to the end of the episode, both Haley and Lucas wake up. And the big thing, like I said, the big cliffhanger of this episode, because everybody's woke, they're okay, the baby's okay, they're awake. We know the stuff with Dante is still in the background. That's still going to come back, and Dan's still in prison too in this episode. So, you still have that stuff carrying over, but the big thing is Keith tells Lucas essentially that Jimmy didn't kill him. He doesn't come out right and say it, but he's like, "Why do you believe that?" He's like, look around you, Lucas. Look into your heart. Like, what? Open your eyes. What do you see? And the episode ends with Lucas waking up after Keith said that. So you're like, what did he see? Does he know the truth? As we get to the next episode, he doesn't, but the breadcrumbs are there, and we're going to find out in future episodes. And I can't wait to talk about those, but that's the mid-season finale of season 4. We are halfway through season 4, and soon we'll be done with this season, and once I get done with this season, I'm going to put out my, I'm going to do a video. I'm going to get Sarah's response too, but I'm going to do a video with Ethan, who was a big fan of the show as well, and we're going to talk about our favorite moments, favorite episodes, favorite characters, and even rank the season for you guys. And that's what we're going to do after season 4, and then we're going to go into season 5, which is a 5-year time jump. We're going to discuss that. I'm really excited about getting into the other years. I feel like there's a lot to talk about there, but there's a lot to talk about still left in season 4. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe, and go check out my other content as well. I have videos all throughout the week about film, and a lot of different things, a lot of different type of videos, so if you're interested in any of that. But thank you guys for checking this video out, and I'll see you next time.